Good afternoon. Today is April 14th, 2005. We're at the home of Constance Simard. My name is Brad Hoops. I'm the interviewer for the Oral History Veterans Project. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you.
Let's start out, if you could tell us your date of birth and where you were born.
Well, I was born March 14th, 1921. I think at that time it was the Gale Hospital. and where? Right in Haverhill,
Haverhill.
Mass. And my folks lived, I think, 30-something Primrose Street at that time. Yeah.
Tell us about your life. How many siblings did you have? And what, I guess, a little bit about your life before the war.
Well, we were brought up, three of us together. I have a younger brother and an older brother. I was the middle child. And 12 years later on, I had another sister, and 18 years after that, I had another sister. So my mother brought up two different families. The rest of us, the first three, are all grown up when the other two came along. So it made it very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you remember where you were and what you thought when you heard about Pearl Harbor being bombed?
I probably was at home listening to the radio or something when all that came on. Yeah. That's when we lived at 95 Pilgrim Road. And all I could think of was this, oh my God, a war. What does that mean, you know? What does it mean to us? But I never thought I'd be a part of it or anything like that. I did get to be, what were they, the war, they had the helmets, the ones that, when they had air raids or something, are supposed to have air, the wardens, wardens.
Okay.
I became one of those.
For Haverhill? For the Haverhill? In
Yeah.
Haverhill?
In Haverhill. We used to meet down, what was the name of the school that was on the corner of Hilldale Avenue and Broadway? There was a school down there, public school.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Because St. Joseph's was over across the street, you know?
Oh, so it's since has been torn
I
down.
can't
then.
remember what
Yeah.
that was.
So there must have been concern of Haverhill being bombed?
Yeah, that's where we used to meet. We had our training for giving. You have to forgive me.
That's fine.
My mind, either that or I just don't have. I don't converse enough with people. I'm alone too much. I forget the words for things. Artificial respiration there, you know, when you get. That's where I went for lessons for that too, for the Red Cross. Well, anyway, that was the extent of what I did before I got in the service.
When
I was working in the shoe shop at the time. I was what you call the bottom cementer. And then I started working at Daniel's Machine Shop on Walnut Street, running an engine lathe. And then when they moved up to, I think they moved to Washington Street or something, well, I got dropped off. So a bunch of us that got dropped off ended up at the Riverworks in Lynn, General Electric Riverworks. And I was still running an engine lathe there. But I never seemed to get ahead. I just seemed to say, in a school. So I says, well, this isn't for me. And I was rooming in Lynn with a girl that I knew from Haverhill. And we had one room in a rooming house. And we had to have all our meals out and everything. And that didn't go over too well. So the first thing I did was go to the recruiting office in Lynn, and I joined the WWII. And I hadn't told my folks or anything. I never told them anything till I was accepted.
What time period was this? Do you remember when you?
Well, I went in May, so it had to be.
May of 42?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, 43.
43? Okay.
43. It had to be early spring, I'd say. March
Okay.
or April. I must probably just had my 22nd birthday or something. And yeah, because I had my 23rd birthday. It was after an air raid in Naples.
So what prompted you to enlist?
Well, my two brothers were already in the Air Force.
Can I interrupt real quickly because I forgot to ask if you could give us your maiden name at the time, because you weren't married by then, correct?
No, I wasn't married. My name was Sabourin. I was
Sabourin.
yeah.
Okay.
And I had two brothers already in the service, both of them in the Air Force. My older brother was in training, flight training for a pilot, and my younger brother was studying for, well, he became a tail gunner in the B-17s, so that's how that ended. And my brother Roland, my older brother, graduated from flight school and that in May of 1943, because I was home on a weekend pass for the May 30th, I think it was holiday or something, and my brother came home at the same time, and he was getting married. He got married June 2nd. So I do have a couple of snapshots of us taken at home. Of course, that time, well, let's begin again. Do we have to go back or something?
No, we can continue as you like.
No.
But I guess my initial question was what prompted you to join the WACs? It was relatively new.
I wasn't going anywhere on the job I was on. I was a little disgusted with that, so, and I wasn't happy with the way we were living. And I didn't want to go back home, because then I'd probably end up in the shoe shop again, you know. And I thought it would be a big adventure for me, and I thought I'd be doing something, and I'd be, well, I didn't know I was going to end up assigned to the Air Force. But we were the first WAC company assigned to the Air Force in the Mediterranean.
I was going to say, the WACs were a relatively new organization, weren't they?
We were still the Women's Auxiliary Army Corps. And it was September 1st that they officially became Women's Army Corps. But we were sworn in August 26th. They had to get in ahead. And I think it was, I had to report for basic training at Fort Devens, and I had to report in on May 10th. Now, May 9th was my father's 50th birthday, and it was Mother's Day that year, so it was quite a celebration. And on May 10th, I had a family, my Uncle Arthur and Aunt Verna Goodrow were moving to California. So they drove us all down to the train station and saw me off before they left for California. So that was a big whoop-de-doo. But that was my send-off. And it was several weeks before I got a weekend pass to come home.
Now, you said you had enlisted without telling your parents. What was their reaction when you finally announced that you had joined?
I wasn't too happy. They weren't too happy about the idea of my joining the WAC, but I think it's just that they didn't know what I was getting into or anything, or where I was going to end or anything else, you know. And I'd never been away from home, so they were a little worried, I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay.
But I wasn't smart enough to be, I wasn't going to worry.
Yeah.
Let someone else worry.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then we had the basic at Fort Devens. I don't even remember how many weeks I was there or anything, but what a change, you know, from civilian life.
Oh, sure.
This hop to all the time, and it's changing uniforms for this and that and everything else. And we were in our own area. We had our own women doing guard duty at night and all this stuff. We had our own mess hall, did our own KP. So, as a matter of fact, I'd found out one day I'd had KP. Several weeks later, I got a letter from the family saying they had showed up at Fort Dix to see me, and I never even heard that they were there to see me.
Oh, no.
No. And they said they waited around for hours. They thought somebody would notify me, you know, and let me know. But I never heard they were there.
Wow.
Anyway, I finally got out of basic training. But it was the exercising, and you were really busy from 7 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock at night, you know.
And you said everything was kept, the men and the women were kept apart?
Oh, we had nothing to do with the men's area. Nothing. We had our own area. So we hardly ever, you had to go to PX to see a man.
Oh, sorry.
Really. So I learned to play pool there. Not too well, but I did okay. And I even won an award where we had used to have dances on Saturday nights. And I won an award for Miss Apple Blossom Time. I got this nice red velour manicure set. And I took that overseas with me. I had it with me all the time I was overseas. I think that's the first time I ever won anything.
Wow.
So it was there was a lot of fun with it, you know. It wasn't all work. I mean, the weekends were good and everything else.
Could you get weekend passes, or were
Yeah, you got weekend passes. I wasn't too affluent in those days, so I didn't go too far. When I went, I came home. And I know a lot of girls, of course, that came from other parts of the country. They'd go into Boston for shows and all this stuff, you know. Well, I wasn't up to that. Besides, I miss my family anyway. So the first thing you know, basic is finished. And then everybody starts getting assigned here, there, in every direction. And we're still sitting there. So finally, I had on my application told them I would like overseas duty. So first thing I know, a bunch of us are sent across the parade ground to this overseas company training area. So that was all right by me. We were the 175th WWII Overhead Company, I think it's called. Headquarters Company Overhead. Apparently, it's the only way they could afford us. I'm not sure. So then we waited for orders. That's where we first met our Captain Stretch. Now, when we got her overseas, she had her own Jeep, and it was called two-way. Eventually, when we were in Italy, she got transferred. We got a new CO. She was Captain Fry, so she was Small Fry.
Behind your back, or
things like that,
yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
So, well, anyway, we got to 175th, then we started exercising, blitz courses in Spanish and French. Of course, we went to Italy. And what else did we, I don't remember what else we took up there. Most of it for overseas was taken at Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia. That's where we went from Fort Devens down to Fort Oglethorpe.
That's probably the furthest you'd ever been away from home, too, I would imagine, yes? Down to Georgia? Growing up, you probably hadn't traveled much, I would imagine, and was that the
that
furthest
was a biggie.
Yeah.
That was a long train trip, I'll tell you. It was a troop train. We did our own KP and everything out of baggage cars. But we survived and finally got down to Fort Oglethorpe. Now, even at Fort Oglethorpe, we got there, had to be late August. Yeah, because we were sworn in August 26th. It was after that was shipped down to Oglethorpe. And it was still warm weather and everything else. And we were in the same boat, except there we had to take care of our own furnaces and all the stuff for our hot water and everything else, and our own KP. Well, we always had our own KP and our own mess halls. But there was hauling, was it coal for the furnaces and stuff, you know, which is something we weren't used to having. Fortunately, it didn't last too long. That only came in when it got to the latter part. Before we sailed in October, yeah. So it was just when it started to cool off and everything that it really got to be a real job.
Now, when you traveled down to Georgia, did you travel by yourself, or were there still women that you'd gone to basic with?
You know, we only saw our cars, which were just us, the women. So if there were men, they had to be somewhere else.
But as far as when you traveled, did you travel with some of the same women in your own unit?
Oh,
or
yes.
Okay, all right.
No, as you traveled as a group.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Then what?
So you were in Georgia until October, I think you said. Did
Yes,
you go anywhere else
until October.
before you went overseas?
Until October, then we went down to Camp Patrick Henry. And I think we were there 5 days before we were sent to board ship, I guess. Because that didn't take too long, whatever it was. But there we learned to pack our A bags and our B bags and all this stuff.
What was an A bag and a B bag? Well,
the B bag was supposed to be shipped ahead of us, you know. The A bag's supposed to stay with you.
okay.
Well, it ended up we didn't have to carry our bags at all. And they told us you can't take this and you can't take that, no breakable stuff. Well, of course, half of the girls sneaked all that stuff in their bags, you know. So, anyway, we got aboard ship. A few girls got sick before we even left the harbor of the dock, never mind. And some got sick on the trip. Apparently I was a good sailor because I didn't get sick.
What was the trip like, and how long did it take you to get overseas?
We went down by the southern route, which was a walkabout way, which took us 9 days to get to Casablanca. And when we got to Casablanca, now that was a smelly place.
Yeah.
All those places are smelly. And they brought us to this camp. I can't remember the name of the camp now, but the fellows had gotten it ready for us. And we got into our barracks, it's supposed to be our barracks, and they had built these wooden frames and they spread chicken wire for to hold the mattress, you know. And the mattress was mattress cover stuffed with straw and hay or whatever they could get their hands on. Now they must have worked like hell. I mean, there were over 100 of us gals. And they had a day room all fixed up with white wicker furniture, and they had bouquets all over the place and everything. And they had a nice meal ready for us. We were really grateful to them, you know. But we didn't get to thank them too much or anything. I mean, we only stayed there a couple of days. And the first night, they took us out in these trucks to watch an outdoor movie. And some of the girls got called off the truck because they had to get ready immediately to send to Algiers to set up a billet for us. So they got out of the trucks where they were gone. But we watched the movie anyway. But another thing, the latrines, you had to cross this big open field to get to the latrines. And to get there and wash up in the morning, they had this big line of faucets. And they had this big wooden trough that ran the whole length of the building at an angle a little bit, so things would keep running out. You know, that's where you brushed your teeth and washed your face and everything. I'm telling you, you went to the latrine, you got someone to go with you. Although they did have guards, they did have male guards around the place. That's the only time we saw the meals, really. Mm. And we were glad we weren't staying there too long because the latrines really got to us.
Were you able to leave camp and look around Morocco at all? Or?
Not by ourselves. You had to go on trips by truck, you know. They took us on a sightseeing trip and everything and showed us the hotel where Roosevelt and everything, all of them met and all this stuff. And I met Judge Raff there. No, not in Casablanca, that was Algiers. Well, anyway, we took off at Algiers eventually. We flew up because then we were attached to the Air Force, so we got to fly places.
Had that been the first time you'd been on an airplane?
Yes, yeah. The first time I had been.
Yeah.
And we landed there, and there were GIs around and all staring at us and pretending they were doing what they were supposed to be doing. You know, we were the first wax to land there, I guess. And it was really something. Now, finally, the trucks got there to take us to our billet. We were going to be billeted in the Musée National des Beaux-Arts. the National Museum of Beaux-Arts in Algiers. They'd taken all the artwork out of it, of course, and there were all these alcoves. Well, you'd had double bunks on each side. I'm trying to remember if there's one across the end. I can't remember that. For to store our clothes in that in, we had these big long gun boxes there that, I don't know what on earth they call them, but that's what you put all your small stuff in. And it made it good to help climb up to the second bunk anyway. I always got the top bunk. I don't think I'd like being underneath. But the girl that I was chummed with at the time is Ludy Hutch. She came from Shaker Heights, Illinois, Cleveland. She liked the lower bunk, which was very fine by me, because I liked the top. And you know how were you in the service?
I wasn't, no.
No?
No.
Well, you had to make your bunks up so tight, you know, that you could bounce a quarter off it. Well, to me it was easier to make up the upper bunk than it was the lower bunk. So I had it easy, but I don't know, I guess I didn't twist and turn much in my sleep. I'd get out in the morning and all I had to do was tighten it up a little. Nothing was out of place.
So conditions by and large, were you comfortable?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we had our own cooks and our own mess hall and everything, you know. So, and we were getting used to the food. It was a little different than home, but just the same, it was still good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And our first Thanksgiving, we had a delicious turkey dinner and everything else. But the next day, half of the company came down with the GIs.
Uh-oh.
GI runs, you know, so it was a steady diet of toast and tea. And they blamed it on, they said the cooks didn't handle the frozen turkeys properly. Wow, who knows? They probably got thawed and refrozen, who knows?
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, when Christmas came around, we had a good Christmas dinner. No GIs or anything. And we had visitors. We had George Raft came. That's how I got his autograph. We had different people coming to visit all the time.
Was it tough being away from your family over the holidays?
Huh?
Was it tough being away from your family for the holidays?
That was a little tough, but we were all in the same boat,
Yeah.
so it wasn't as bad as it could have been, you know. I think it was tougher for people that were up on the front lines than that. It was actually, you can't say we suffered or anything, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So finally we had this testing business to decide which offices you'd work in and all this stuff. Most of the girls are college graduates. I only graduated from high school. I ended up in the signal section as a stock clerk. And they would like index cards. You try to keep track of the batteries and all this stuff, and the radar tubes, and try to hang on to a few flashlights. The flashlights disappeared. They'd come in by the thousand, and the first thing you know, you didn't have any flashlights. I think every native family had one. I'm not sure, but anybody who had a daughter probably did.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I ended up there. It was cold. It was cold, like even in our barracks, because there was all the marble floors, everything, and high ceilings, and our office was the same way. Everything's marble. Wow, wood is scarce in those places.
Yeah.
So we used to go to work with our winter uniform and the Red Cross sleeveless sweater underneath, and your overcoat in the winter months. And used to get these letters from home. How is it in sunny North Africa? I'm like saying it's cold, just as cold here as it is there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when we were in Algiers, we used to be able to go out and buy these 5-pound wooden boxes of dates, you know? used to get, I think you could get the 5-pound boxes here at one time, but we'd get them right from the farm or the
Yeah.
ranch or wherever it was. And that and tangerines, had a lot of tangerines. But you had to be careful. I mean, we only ate at the billet. They told you, don't eat in other places. Of course, eventually, after a couple of years, it was probably safe, you know, who knows. So we stayed there until February of 44. And it was, I think it was middle or towards the end of February, we went up to Algiers, Naples, Italy. We flew there, we stayed overnight I stayed in Victoria, Sicily. Some others stayed in Palermo. And, but we didn't get a chance to do any sightseeing because it was late by the time we got there. Then the next hop was to Naples, dear old Naples. That was it was still dirty. I don't care where you went. People seemed to think open stairways were a latrine or something. You had to watch where you walked, especially in the morning. Awful. Although back to Algiers, we used to go to this YW. It was run by the British, and they used to have the most delicious crumpets and all this stuff that you didn't get in the American one. So we'd dash across the street for our crumpets and tea. That we liked. And I still haven't been able to make a crumpet that tastes anything like it.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
So, all right, back to Naples. We had a billet, a Paco Margarita. Now, the street, you have the seashore and the roads that run along there and the buildings. And then you start going uphill. Paco Margarita is a serpentine thing that goes up. Our front door was on one level, then 3 levels up was on the next bend, you know? So it I don't know if it was a boarding house or what on earth it was, because we got stuck, a bunch of us got stuck in this middle room. They had no windows on the sides. It had just the hallway door with no windows anywhere around there. And then in the back were doors that went out on this little roof. As far as I know, that's all it was a little roof. So we called it the Dark Hole of Calcutta because you had to have electric lights on all the time. Real bad. Well, fortunately, we didn't spend too much time in there. We were working. And by the time you had your dinner at night, you either had washing to do or something to do. Although eventually we got our laundresses lined up, you know, and every weekend they'd be in our back hall there for you to pick up the laundry and stuff, which was fine by us. Because there was a problem doing the ironing and washing and all this business.
Yeah, sure.
And you had to be pressed all the time.
Were you still doing your same position that you were doing in Algiers, in Naples?
Yep.
Yeah.
I was doing the same, actually the same offices and everything. The whole thing moved up there. We were with the 12th Air Force at that time. And then we got to Naples, it was the 12th and the 15th Air Force. Eventually, the 12th Air Force moved further north. So we lost them. Well, they lost us. They didn't want the wax going up there. So I used to have a lot of fun with the 12th. They're the first ones that took us on a sightseeing tour up the Mount Vesuvius to the halfway house that used to be run by Cook Tours. I still have one of the Cook Tour ashtrays.
So it must have been very exciting for a Haverhill girl to see all these exotic places. I mean, you went to some very exotic places, yeah.
Yeah, we were in Algiers. I got Algiers mixed up. Naples, when Mount Vesuvius erupted. It erupted the day after my birthday. I said, you should have done it a day sooner.
Yeah. Oh, that must have been something to see.
But I think I got my first furlough, had to be, I think it had to be before my birthday because we were on the Isle of Capri. That's where Air Force West Camp was, on the Isle of Capri. I went there a lot. So we were on our first furlough there, a bunch of us, and we were on overlooking the harbor there and looking towards Naples when we saw our first air raid over Naples. And we could see all of the firing and all this stuff. And said, aren't we glad we aren't there? Well, after Mount Vesuvius erupted, we had almost nightly air raids because it was just like, it just was a direction, you know, you just go fly from Mount Vesuvius and Naples right underneath you. So one of our trips, we lost part of one of our billets. We had two buildings, one diagonally across from the other. The one that's on the other side was for the telephone operators and the cooks and that, because they had such weird hours, you know. Well, a couple of them almost stayed in the building too late, but it took down, sheared off a whole corner of the building anyway. You could see some of their uniforms hanging and stuff. Well, we had to move after that. We did stick around our old billet, but we were crowded. And I think it was about 3 months after before we moved further up the street. Used to be a boarding house. And there we seemed to have room for everybody, because I think we were all in that one building. And it was really nice. As a matter of fact, I was in one room. Then we had twin beds. Then another girl came in, she had a cot. Well, we were the first ones there, so my friend and I got the twin beds. And it was nice. It was still the marble floors, and you had armoires. You didn't have no closets. Nobody had closets. Everybody had an armoire. And no screen doors either, and you had mosquitoes. But we each had a little balcony. And actually, our office was just sort of kitty corner up the street from where we were. But eventually the office moved downhill. So we had to, usually took our Jeep to work. They had two or three Jeeps that would take the gals down to work. Because some of them were separated, you know. The offices weren't all on one street. Oh, what else happened?
What was the air raids like? Were they? I imagine they must have been frightening, or.
Oh, they were. They got so we'd go to bed half dressed, you know. So all you'd have to do is throw your coat on. Well, I know once we went that I couldn't seem to get my darn helmet untangled. Like I had it on my arm apparently before I tried to put my coat on. First thing I know, it's rolling down the street, and I'm chasing after it. Fortunately, it's going in the right direction. When we first got there, we went to the natives,
Yeah.
the Italian Ricardoveros, I think Ricardoveros. We had our own name for it, Al's place. It was much easier. And actually what this was a sort of a tunnel. You went in that street, but they had a funiculare or something, and then they had these steps that went all the way down to the bottom level, to the bottom street. So that's where we'd go, and we'd get down 1 or 2 levels, you know.
Okay.
Yeah. So you could hear the bombing, and you'd sit. We got so we'd sit on our helmets and that, because you had to be there a while, you know, before you got the all clear. And we were up on the hill, and further up the hill were the anti-aircraft. So the whole darn place would shake. So would we. It wasn't funny. And towards the end, they had built us our own air raid shelter just at our back door, because it went in under the highway and everything else, you know, it went into the hills there. which was nice. And we used to let some of the Italians come in with us. Anybody that worked around the place or anything, you know, they'd come in with us. And we'd have these sing-alongs and everything else.
How was interaction with the Italians, the local people? Were they did you interact with the locals very often, or did they pretty much keep to themselves?
No, well, no, you know, we didn't have much contact with them for the simple reason that we weren't on the street much. When you rode to your office and you rode back, you know. But if you went shopping or anything down the middle, they didn't pay too much attention to you. Except the little kids, of course, were always out for candy and stuff, you know. You know, I know one whack was saying that she had saved all that candy and stuff to pass it out. Well, she got mobbed. She finally ended up throwing the bag and running. I'm telling you.
During this time period, how often were you able to keep in contact with your family, with your parents, and with your brothers? How did you get information from home?
Female.
Female.
Yeah.
Can you explain what V-mail was exactly?
V-mail? Can you shut that off a minute?
So you kept in contact with...
Mostly V-mail. And but the letters that came from the States, of course, was the regular mail, airmail. But ours to ship out was V-mail.
Now, were you able to write to your brothers directly, or would you hear from them from your parents, or how would you?
No, we eventually, it took a long time sometimes, you know, because they had such a, they'd move around so much that by the time you got their new address, they were already moved again. So our mail was always held up. Either you got a bunch of them together, or one would dribble in. It was very difficult. I don't know if Jeannie ever got half of my mail.
And the mail you got, was it often censored?
Oh, it was censored. Yeah. Oh, yes. I know I had one letter that I think they had 4 signatures on the envelope. I don't know. It only takes one, yeah. Seems to me. But that's what we used when we were over there and had our APO and everything else. And there was a little square. You had to write small, really, because they weren't very big. So when did they photograph so you could read them, tell you the truth? Some probably used a magnifying glass.
Yeah.
I wouldn't today. Yeah. But that's how we corresponded.
And at the time, all 3 of you children were all in the Europe Theater, right? Both?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Eventually, my brother Roland, was he the first? He was the first to go overseas. Then I think I went overseas, and then my kid brother went overseas. They were both with the 8th Air Force in England.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was with 12th or 15th, I guess, yeah. Over in the Mediterranean.
Did your mother ever talk, be it via a letter or after the war, what it was like, what she was feeling with all of her children in the war?
My mother's letters were always a little sad, and my father's letter was always full of jokes and everything else. When I got my mother's, of course, she'd be about the rationing foods and all this stuff, you know. Well, that wasn't the most important thing to my father. So that probably made the difference and everything. And of course the fact that we were all away and there were just the 2 younger girls at home. Yeah. Yeah. So, but they got through it. And they both, my mother and father both belonged to the Franco-American Legion. And they were very busy with whatever they were doing to help the troops and all this. And when we got home, I joined the Franco-American and I used to go to meetings and that until they moved to Lawrence and that. Then of course I had 3 small children by that time. That's another thing when I got home from the service. Well, we haven't left Naples yet.
Yeah, we'll talk. So now, so you finished out the war in Naples, or would you make a move from?
I had furloughs. Most of my furloughs. I think I must have had 3 or 4 furloughs on the Isle of Capri. It was so relaxing there and so quiet and everything else. And then I got one to Rome, so I got to St. Peter's and everything. And that's why this was so interesting with the death of the Pope and everything they showed. And you can't imagine the size of that place till you see it. Nothing photographs, you know. And I got to Venice. Then I had a chance to go to Switzerland, and I let a friend go. Even the CEO tried to talk me out of it. She says, "Don't do that." She says, "You might never get another chance." Well, I didn't either. But I thought this other gal would never get a chance. I shouldn't have known better. She made her own chances. She got wherever she wanted to go. She got herself stationed on the Isle of Capri.
Really?
Yeah. So, like I say, she really got to where she wanted to go. She went.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I take it you never returned to Europe after in all these years. Did you ever go back to Europe, or have a desire to go back to see the sights again?
No, I never did, but some of the other gals did. As a matter of fact, a couple of them went on one of these tours, and they said we went to. As a matter of fact, they didn't even stay in Naples because they were told it wasn't safe to stay in Naples. But they did get to the Isle of Capri, and they says, "It's so changed since we got lost." I can imagine it's built up and yet they have to have their drinking water shipped in and everything. So that isn't that funny, you know?
Yeah.
But they had these clubs opened up, and then you go to these places where you'd have a glass of wine and somebody'd be playing the violin or something. Beautiful music and everything.
I would imagine with the ratio of wax to the regular army that you must have got a lot of attention, the women, yes?
I had a diary. I don't know what happened to my diary, but my daughter was looking at it and was, "My God, Ma, you went out with a different guy every night." I said, there were just too many, and you got tired. They all tried to run dances. Well, eventually, the gals get tired of going to dances every night, too, you know? It was swell of them to do it, but there was a shortage of women, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, well. I spent a lot of time at the 12th Weather where they had their billet. They made nice French fries, and they always had nice fresh eggs. Fresh eggs and French fries. That was good. You go out to a restaurant to eat, and that's what you get. You'd get eggs, French fries, and a steak. You couldn't get a steak because you paid dearly for it, but you got a steak, which is something we didn't get too often, you know.
Yeah.
And Captain Stretch, when we were in, was it Algiers? No, when we were in Naples, she was the Navy getter. She got sheets for us from the Navy, and she got chocolate milk from the Navy. The Navy, very good friends. Yeah. Now what else?
In your time overseas, did you ever come across anybody from home, from Haverhill? Did you?
When Mount Vesuvius erupted, I saw Joe Ingham, and he lived on Arthur Street, right off Pilgrim Road. So I knew him because, he was more my age. Chummed around with my brother Jeannie, too. And they were there, his company was there to help out, clean out these towns that were buried around Vesuvius and that. So he happened to he knew I was in Naples, so he looked me up. And then Kenneth Sweeney and Renton Elms, I graduated from high school with him. I've got a clipping of a couple of fellows that I met. As a matter of fact, I think Renton Elms was one of them. And who was the other one? He was a twin. He and his twin brother lived up on. Yeah, sure. I don't remember. I can't think of his last name. When I see it, I'll remember it, but anyway, every time I ever saw him, he'd always say, I remember you from Naples, he says. We were riding by in a Jeep and I saw you and I says, that girl's from Haverhill.
Wow. Wow.
So you did meet some. I even met a cousin of mine from Tilton, New Hampshire. His name was Bill Sabourin. Yo, excuse me, but I'm losing my voice. I don't know if I had ever met him before.
Is that right?
But he happened to find, I don't know how he found out I was there. Unless I had a cousin who probably could have told him.
Now, you had mentioned that your youngest brother went down in an airplane.
Yep.
How did you get word of that? Were you still in Italy?
I was at Fort Oglethorpe when that happened.
Oh, you hadn't even shipped off yet. Oh.
I was at Fort Oglethorpe and I was doing KP that day. And I got a furlough, and that was in August 19th. And I got a furlough in September. They'd given quite a few girls furloughs before we went overseas. So I did get home, had a picture taken in uniform, so. Well, my mother was glad to see me, that's for sure, and my father, especially after losing Jeannie. Jeannie was one of these kids that everybody just loved. He's just a nice kid. Well, Roland, everybody loves Roland too. They're just personality kids, I guess. I got pictures of them I can show you after.
Was it, so I imagine it must have been that much tougher when you left on your furlough to go overseas for your parents to see you leave. Or did they talk about that at all? I mean, were they...
They weren't too happy about it, but yeah. They realized it was going to be an adventure for me, and a part of growing up and everything else. It was something I would never have done or seen otherwise. So, I don't know. I know they hate to see us all go anyway, but the thing was, it was war. I'll show you later, I have a book that I got from the 8th Air Force Museum, and my brother Roland told me about it. They put it out, and I sent for 5 copies. I sent to my 2 sisters and 3 for us, for my children. And it was put out all about this mission that my brother lost his life on. The whole thing's on that mission. Mission 85, it says. What was supposed to be a milk run turned sour. You know? Now, where were we?
Well, we'll go back to Naples again.
Yeah.
And I guess start towards the end of the war. Do you remember where you were when you heard that President Roosevelt had died?
I was probably at work. That's where we usually were, daytimes, weekdays especially. And I think that was a Monday or something, if I remember what I read. Because we went to the Palm Theater for a ceremony in memorial. The whole area, the men and women and everything, you know. And then the same thing on the VE Day.
Yeah, where were you? Where were you? Do you remember that day? Can you tell us about that?
Well, no. I have a terrible memory. No, I was probably working then too. And I think VE Day is when we had to march down to Soldiers Park, and they had a ceremony down there. And then we got a day off, which everybody spent at the beach, getting a tan, taking all kinds of races. I think we won, another guy and I, you know, like if the girl sits on the shoulders, you know, you win a battle. I won 2 watches. I says, oh goodness, got a bad burn. I gone from a 1-piece bathing suit to a 2-piece bathing suit, and I had a big bubble. That was terrible. When I tried to put my skirt on the next day to go to work and everything else. Not funny.
Yeah.
Live and learn.
Yeah.
But
How much?
after that, well, we got this big speech and everything else of how we'd done a wonderful job. And as a matter of fact, we had gotten the Romano Bronze Campaign Star for that, the billet, after the billet was bombed and that. And then we got a meritorious service plaque for the whole company for our good job we'd done. Well, those are a couple things we got.
How much, as soon as the war ended, how much longer were you overseas before you finally were shipped back home?
Well, it was after VJ Day. I think it was in late September or something. We went to Rebel Depot. That's reinforcement depot, you know, where the fellows would come in or leave, come in to replace guys that were going home. The Rebel Depot. And I think we were there a couple of weeks before we left to go home. So we spent most of it getting our tans up to date and everything else, so go home healthy and everything, you know. I can't remember what the date we sailed on. It took us 11 days to get home because we sailed from Naples, which meant a couple extra days just to get to Gibraltar. And, but at least it wasn't roundabout like coming over. And we landed at Fort Dix. Then you had to go through your exams and everything else to get out. We spent our first night, the four of us gals, spent the first day in some of the big department stores shopping. And we went to the Zanzibar, it's a nightclub, I don't know if it's a nightclub or a restaurant or what the heck it was, cafe or something. We went to the Zanzibar. I have a picture of that too. And the other three gals I was with, I've never heard from since. Strange, because in all this time, from about the time we went home, and everybody settled down, they started writing this letter. And one of the girls took it over. Everybody would write to her, and then she'd make copies and send them out to everybody whose address she had. It was quite a thing when it started, but it's down to quite small today. It's passed through 2 or 3 different hands since then. And the gal is doing it today doesn't have the job the other one had because she only gets it down to about 3 pages now. It used to be quite full. And it used to cost quite a bit.
Yeah.
So we were always sending in checks and that to help pay for the postage. But we had changes of address and what they were doing, and now they're all grandmothers and everything else, you know. We have a lot of them are passing on. Each letter there's 2 or 3 more that are gone.
Have you ever had, or do you guys ever have a reunion? Have you ever had a reunion where you've met?
Is my thing working? Yes, it is. Do you hear a noise?
Just the traffic, I think, a little bit outside.
It isn't traffic.
No.
Do you hear a humming like,
No.
or a motor like? Okay. My son asked me to ask you, because nobody hears this noise that I hear all day long. For 3 years I've been hearing this noise. Where were we?
Do you guys ever, does your group ever get together for a reunion, or have you ever had a reunion since the war?
Oh, yes, we've had reunions. I've only been to a couple, though. I went to one in New York. That's my husband was still living then, and he came with us. And in '93, I went out to California. We had one on the Queen Mary, but there were only 11 of us showed up. And my brother joined us. They enjoyed my brother. So, did I go to any others? I don't think so. Those are the two They've had some, no, I went to one in Boston. I think the one in Boston was the first one we went to. And that gal's still living there. Is it Commonwealth Avenue or one of those tree-lined ones there? She's still living one of those little narrow, you know? Yep.
So once you had gone through all of your exams and stuff in Fort Dix, and then you were discharged and sent home, or where did you go from Fort Dix?
We only stayed Fort Dix until they checked us out. Then we went out and stayed at a hotel. And I told you these four of us anyway stuck together till that night. And we went to the Zanzibar and we came home and says, tomorrow we're going home. I want to go home. So the next day we did head for home, but my folks weren't expecting. They didn't know I was in the country.
Oh, really?
And I landed there about the middle of the night, I think, by taxi. Rang the doorbell and I almost died. I didn't want to call him and let him know I was coming. I thought it was just as well this way.
Yeah.
My mother would get all excited.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how that ended.
How long then from the time you left Haverhill on your leave before you shipped out until you got home? How long were you away from home?
Actually, I was in the service about, God, what was it? What is it on my paper? I always say, that's a copy of my, I always say I was in there about 2.5 years. And almost 2 years of it was overseas, you know?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. 23.5 months is what it was. And we had our 4 bars to sew on our thing, and they wouldn't let us put it on. They said, when you get bored ship, sew it on. So that's what we did. By the time we got home, it was almost 2 years. It was just a few days less. Hey, we wanted our 4 bars.
Yeah, yeah.
You got a bath every 6 months, you know? Yeah.
So so now you're home.
And I did nothing.
Did nothing? Yeah.
And I see all these GIs sitting around on the steps down in Lafayette Square there. They'd be sitting around there doing nothing, collecting their unemployment or whatever it was. I says, why can't I do that? But they wouldn't. No, because I could get a job.
Why was that? It was.
I don't know. I don't know if I even tried, to tell you the truth.
So I believe there was what was it called, the 2052 Club, where the government paid soldiers $20 a month or $20 a week. You weren't entitled to any of. Talking to other veterans, they talked about. I think it was the 5220 Club or something.
Yeah, I never got that.
Never, the women
No.
just never got.
Now that's what these guys sitting around. They were
Yeah.
collecting
Yeah.
those, you know.
Yeah.
And no, I never got that. And then I met Henry. I had never met Henry. We always lived in the same area. And his cousin. I have a lot of black and blue spots. I got up with that one this morning. I'm on chemo, that's why.
You met Henry.
I met Henry. They lived at 31 Lowell Avenue, where Dr. Simard lived. Well, the house was only built just before the war. I think it was 35 or something like that. And Henry went in the service in 41, so he was away. And he came home from the service a month before I did. But he'd been over there no, he hadn't been over there. He hadn't been over there that long. He was spent most of his time in the States. He was with the 26th Division. And his cousins set us up. Made a date for us. Well, eventually, we got married in February of that year, yeah. Had 3 children. Yeah.
Did you or Henry take advantage of the GI Bill in the way of school or for your
Henry
house?
had already had 5 years of pharmacy. He was the
Oh,
pharmacist
okay.
anyway.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I didn't, because I hadn't taken any courses that would get me into
Yeah,
college
yeah.
to begin with. So I didn't know what I wanted to do, to tell you the truth. It's probably why I ended up married. Yeah. So anyway, Henry got out a month before I did, and we started dating and that, with double dates with his cousin and someone else. She ended up, well, as a matter of fact, the guy she married is a fellow I used to take the late bus home from Haverhill to Fort Devens.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. Bill Gorski, I don't know if you ever heard of him. No. Yeah, we used to catch the same train going back.
So and you raised 3 children in Haverhill. Spent the rest of your life in Haverhill until you moved here to Methuen?
We lived in Haverhill after we were married. Let's see, 6 years, 15, 21 years in Haverhill, 17 years up in Plasto. I took up, after the children grown up and I was in Plasto, I took up painting, oil painting and that. And I got involved in community theater up there, Sound of Music and stuff like that. And I served 1 session in the state legislature after my son had served, but he couldn't afford to stay in. My, you can afford it, and all it takes is common sense. But you have to be a wheeler dealer, and I'm no wheeler dealer, so I didn't run for re-election. One of the women that I ran with stayed in until she was 90. She just quit there. This was 74, 75 when we ran. She just quit.
Wow, wow.
But she was brought up in a political family. Her father was Forrest Smith. So she stayed. She just loved that stuff. She thrived on it.
So by and large, looking back on your career in the military, it was a good experience.
Oh,
for
it
you?
was.
Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't have missed it, really. Yeah. After I got home, I says, well, now that I've seen the folks, what did I get out for? I should have just taken a furlough and gone back.
Yeah.
Well, neither here nor there. It's just as well.
Yeah.
It worked out just as well.
How do you think, obviously it was a very important part of your life, how do you think it affected your life? Do you think it changed you at all?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I felt more as though, well, I could do as I pleased for a change. I felt as though I was more my own boss.
Which you may not have.
I grew up is what I did, I think.
Yeah. Which you may not have had that opportunity had you been in civilian life, do you think?
I don't know what I would have done. I probably would have gone back to the shoe shop or something or other, yeah. Because I don't think I'd have stayed at Riverworks very long. It wasn't my cup of tea either. At Daniels, it wasn't bad. It was closer to home and that. As a matter of fact, my father worked there on a different shift. He'd just been, life must have been wonderful for my mother. My father would just be coming home and I'd just be going to work. There was always someone sleeping.
Well, as we get towards the end of the interview, is there anything that we left out that you wanted to talk about? Any stories?
I'd probably think of it tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay.
There's probably a lot of stories that I can't remember. There probably were. It's mostly though, like when we gone to Rome, my bunkmate she's wonderful for meeting people, and she met these fighter pilots, and we bummed a ride on a fighter where we had to really crawl into this little space, but we came home by truck. That wasn't funny. But of course, coming by truck, you saw all the thing gone through, the bombing.
Was there still a lot of damage and stuff?
Yeah. we were spared all that.
Yeah.
I'm really losing my voice.
Okay, yeah, so we'll
I'm
tail
not,
up
I'm
here.
not used to I'm not used to having anybody to talk to.
We'll
I think that, we had, when we had moved to our new billet on Paco Margarita, we had our own club, where we had our own bar and had tables and stools at the bar, and the gals would take turns being barmaid. And one girl says one night she was using the Italian shot glasses, which held a double shot apparently. She said, it's a wonder she didn't knock everybody out. I says, oh my goodness. I served, and I didn't know much about mixing drinks, I'm telling you. They had to give me a blitz course in it. That's another thing, we had a blitz course in French and Spanish before we went to Italy. And our Captain Stretch, we lost her when we were in Naples. They sent her to be, what? The Airwac staff director of the theater. So we got a new captain. I think I told you about her, Captain Fry. She was small fry.
And you went, what was your thoughts on both of these commanders? Did you like them? Did you respect them?
They were, oh yes, they were all very, very good, very, very nice. This Jane Stretch was really, she was really top notch, yeah. Short, squat, my size. Yeah, and then we had one of our officers, let's see, what was this? Our executive officer, our Lieutenant Hemphill, was killed in a plane crash coming back from Barry. She was on duty in Barry and she was flying back to Naples. Oh dear. I think that's most of what happened.
Okay.
We had Lily Pons and other people like that visiting us and that, which was really nice, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Some of them would come in for lunch. They were really taking their chances, you know, but just, well, you knew ahead of time, so you know that the cooks put themselves out anyway. And Christmas time, the last Christmas we were there, we had all these little kids from an orphanage that was near us. We had them over for a meal and presents and all this stuff. It gave it a little more meaning, you know.
Yeah.
And we had Christmas trees on each level. You used chaff and anything you could make to decorate the trees with. See who got the best decoration. Well, the second floor got it. Needless to say, I was on the first floor. I think that's the biggest part.
Okay. Well, we'll close out the interview. I guess in closing, is there any statement or thoughts that you want to express to future generations that'll look at this film?
Well, the only thing I can say now, you probably would rather I didn't say it, but if the service was the way it is today and the way the women are put in with men and all this stuff, I would never have joined. I would never have joined.
Yeah.
I think the way it was run when we were in the WWII, I think that was fine. We did office work the way we were supposed to, and that, I think it's up for the men to carry the arms and all that. We had no guns. We never got near a gun or anything. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Okay.
I do not approve of this, the way they're running it today.
At being in the war, what is your opinion of war? Like the conflict we're in today. Do you have thoughts about war?
I wish there was a way they could do this without this war business. I mean, it seems to me people are smart enough today. Why can't they work out? But I will say one thing. Over there, they've been battling since time began. Who are we going to stop it? Sometimes I like to say, hey, pull the troops up, let them keep killing themselves off. which is not very nice.
Well, in the interview now, Constance, I appreciate your time today and appreciate your service to our country.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad you took the time to do it.
Can you describe this picture here?
Oh, this is our summer uniform. That's one of the first, with the first blouses we get with our regular old, the first hobby hat. Oh, this is our WAAC pin that we wore when we were when we reported for basic training at Fort Devens. This is the day that I reported at the railroad station, and here we are at North Station getting ready to go to Fort Devens. This was on May 10th, 1943.
And which one are you?
And here I am right in the front row.
This picture.
Okay, this is part of our billet that was bombed out at the 28 Paco Margarita in Naples, Italy. And this happened about March 1943. Part of our telephone operators and cooks and bakers and that were billeted here. The main company was across the street in another building. Fortunately, no one was hurt. We were all in the air raid shelter, practically across the street from the building. We had to walk over some of the rubbish that was left there in order to get back home, and then we were in a garage shivering our heads off while I had roll call to see if we were all accounted for. That's just about it.